Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight for this forum. We are with the Northern Kentucky League of Women Voters. I'm Becky Jones. I'm the coordinator for the Northern Kentucky League. I'm joined tonight by Lou Ann Elliott, who is our Voter Services Coordinator, chairman of that committee. We have been graciously invited to participate tonight by the Northern Kentucky Forum and Daniel Myers, who is president of the Northern Kentucky University Student Government Association. So we thank you very much for inviting us to be here. We have audience members, we have webinar audience members. For those who are on the webinar, if you'd like to submit questions as we go through the presentation tonight, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. Luann will be monitoring that for us as we go along. And if we have any audience members who would like to ask a question, you may do so as well. Tonight's presentation on Kentucky Voting Rights Basics is courtesy of the State Kentucky League of Women Voters, specifically the work of researcher and writer attorney Susan Perkins Weston, who lives in Danville, Kentucky. This program is available for presentation to any and all groups throughout the state. We're happy to share with anyone and everyone. Let me tell you about the League of Women Voters of Kentucky. First of all, you need to know that the League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization. We encourage the informed and active participation of citizens in government. We work to increase understanding of major public policy, and we work to influence public policy through education and advocacy. We are nonpartisan. Although we take action on issues, we do not support any candidates. Tonight, we're not talking about our advocacy positions. We are here to talk about the changes in voting in Kentucky that occurred because of changes that the legislature made this past session. So there are 5 questions that I want everyone to think about. First of all, is your voter registration up to date? Which photo ID will you use to vote? Which voting option will you use? We have several options coming up in November. Number 4, where will you vote? And number 5, how can you help family, friends, and neighbors answer these questions and participate in democracy? Let's talk about if you're eligible to vote. Who's eligible? You can vote if you are a U.S. citizen, you are a Kentucky resident, you will be 18 or over by November 8th, you don't claim the right to vote in another state, you have not been found mentally incompetent by a court, you have not been convicted of a felony, or you have had your rights restored. I want to make an aside here that there is a State Board of Elections website called govoteky.com. It's also found at govote.ky.gov. You could type in govoteky and it'll take you there. And you can find where you can look up your voter registration and see if you are registered to vote. Also, civilrightsrestoration.ky.gov. For anyone who has a felony conviction, who wants to see if their rights have been restored, if they've served their sentence, you need to go to civilrightsrestoration.ky.gov. For those in the audience, we also have some information that we've brought, handouts that we want you to take and share with others who may want to share with need to know this information. Luann?
Well, I just wanted to interject that with the restoration rights, Kentucky's Constitution for a felony does not automatically restore rights to vote when their sentences are complete. So there is a process to go through, and that's what Becky was saying.
Right.
So
we can talk about this more later. Kentucky is one of three states nationally, Kentucky, Iowa, and Virginia, that do not automatically restore voting rights to persons who have served their sentence on a felony conviction. So Kentucky voter registration at govoteky.com, you click those 6 boxes to confirm your eligibility. You simply enter your name, address, birth date, social, and click submit. And then you can just watch your mailbox for a confirmation card saying that you're registered. There is postcard registration in Kentucky. I would encourage everyone at this point, since we're so close to the deadline of October 11th, it's actually 4 p.m. on October 11th, that you have to be registered to vote, to do it online. It's going to be cleaner, simpler, and you're going to know immediately that you've got it taken care of. So how you can check your Kentucky voter registration. Again, use govoteky.com, and you can update there if you your address has changed, or you can update your name if you have a legal name change. You can spot and fix any changes or removals. We have some information on the screen that tells us how a voter can be removed from the rolls. It is always wise to check that your registration is still active before you show up at the poll and find out otherwise. Something may have happened that you're not aware of. So I encourage everybody to use govoteky.com, type in your name, your social, and if you're registered and active, it'll pop up and tell you right away. Now let's talk about photo IDs to vote in Kentucky. To vote in Kentucky in November, you must bring identification showing your name and photograph from one of these sources we have on the screen. Can be Kentucky state government, for example, your driver's license. The U.S. government, an example is a passport. U.S. Defense Department, if you're in armed services. Of course, college IDs can be used, or Kentucky local government IDs. Let's move ahead. What happens if you don't have one of these photo IDs? Well, the state has provided an opportunity to get a free ID. You can go to drive.ky.gov. It's where they issue driver's licenses, and you can get a free photo ID there. Also want to point out that there is an opportunity for affirmation when you go to vote. At the polling place, if you fill out a form, you need to explain why you can't get a photo ID, but you do need to show another form of ID. For example, another ID card with your name and photo, a social security card, Kentucky food stamps, EBT or SNAP, credit or debit card with your name, or another ID issued by a Kentucky county or approved by the State Board of Elections. So what are our voting options this year? Well, we have 4 options. There is Election Day, of course, which is Tuesday, November 8th. There is early voting, there is excused voting, and there is mail-in excused voting. I just want to point out for our audience that we have these postcards available. These are really handy to keep, share with friends, neighbors, that reminds everybody what these early days are, as well as the November 8th Election Day.
Can I interject something
Absolutely.
else? In that Kentucky, pre-COVID, you only got to vote either absentee voting with an excuse or on Election Day. So during COVID, Kentucky did change some of their laws to be a little bit more open and have a longer voting period.
So although we do not have no excuse absentee ballot, the mail-in, it has to be excused as it was in the past. The legislature did work to expand voting options that were in place pre-2020. So we are making progress. So let's talk about Kentucky Election Day voting basics. So on Tuesday, November 8th, voting hours are 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. local time. Encourage you to check out voting locations because the legislature has gone through some redistricting. Boundaries have changed for districts. Polling places have changed for districts. So you need to check your precinct number, which you can get at govoteky.com. And then that will tell you, you need to go to your county board and find out where your polling place is. Each county, this is sort of a outcome of what we went through during COVID. Each county will have a kind of a super center You have to have at least one per county. Some counties will have more than one, but check your county clerk website and it'll tell you where those super centers are. Anybody, it doesn't matter where you live, anybody can go to that center and vote.
And that information is up on the website now because I checked it yesterday.
Very good. All right. So Kentucky early voting, it's a new option. It's open to everybody. There will be 3 days. It is the, where it's no excuse. It's Thursday, Friday, and Saturday before Election Day. You can walk into your polling place. This is, again, a place, it won't be all of those individual precincts that are open on November the 8th. So you need to check where that centralized polling place is in your county. But you can go, it has to be, the place needs to be open for at least 8 hours between 6 a.m. and 8 p.m. And if you go on the, it's the elect.ky.gov, and that is the State Board of Elections. They list every county in the state. If you just peruse through all of those counties, you'll see that some counties choose different hours. It's up to the local county board of elections to determine if they want, 6 to 8 or 6 to 6 or 7 to 5. So you need to check where you live, what the hours will be. And then we have extra early voting option for some people. This is voting with an excuse. This is 6 days before Election Day, so it's 6 business days. So it's the Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, the week before November 8th, and then it is, that's 2 weeks before actually, and then the 31st, 1st, and 2nd of the week before. So there are 6 days before Election Day where you can vote early, but you have to have an excuse. So let's talk about what those excuses are. You can use this voting option if you have age, disability, or illness that prevent you from voting. You're living out of state temporarily, living out of county temporarily, working or commuting, scheduled for surgery or hospitalization, pregnancy in the last trimester, you work as an election officer, military or overseas voter, or a uniformed services voter confined to a base. So this, the extra 6 days is an option for folks who didn't think they needed to vote by an absentee ballot, but something may have come up and that prevents them from being in the location where they need to be. But you do need to go to your county clerk's office to apply for that and get an excuse. Okay. Kentucky voting by mail schedule. We are coming up to October 11th is the last day to register to vote. Shortly thereafter is the last day to request a mail-in ballot. And as you can see, that's October 25th. You have to use govoteky.com, and your request needs to be submitted by 11:59 p.m.
Go back to that other.
Okay.
And read on the bottom, if you or your spouse have a medical emergency.
Yes, well, this is Luann's just reminding us at the bottom of our screen here, if you or your spouse have a medical emergency, you can both apply for a mail-in ballot from October 25th to November 8th. Thank you.
In case somebody breaks their leg or something.
Yeah.
These are young people that are active.
Right. All right, now Kentucky voting by mail. Who can use this? It's similar to the other requirements that we read before. Age, disability, or illness, living out of state, living out of county. Students can take advantage of this. Out of county for all hours of in-person voting, in jail on criminal charges, but not convicted of a crime. That's important to remember. I think folks don't realize that you can be held, but you haven't been charged with a crime yet. You still have a right to vote. If you're in the Crime Victim Address Confidentiality Program, you're in the military or overseas, or you're unable to vote on any of the in-person days, you can take advantage of vote by mail ballot. Now, the process for requesting your mail-in ballot, again, go to govoteky.com. When the ballot arrives, you have to complete it, and you use 2 envelopes. I want to emphasize here that you need to follow the instructions very carefully. There is a ballot. There will be 2 envelopes. When you complete your ballot, and it will be, I'm pretty sure in every county, a front and a back side, so don't forget to turn it over. There are a lot of races and issues on the ballot this year. You sign it. You need to insert it in the inner envelope, and then do what it says to seal it. Then you insert it into the outer envelope. You have to put your return address. So just be very careful and follow all those instructions. Also, govoteky.com gives you the ability to track your ballot. So you can find out if it is making its way through the system.
Can I make another
Sure.
comment? Mm-hmm. I don't mean to interrupt, but I saw a little note on the last slide where it said that you can, if you make a mistake on your ballot or when you're registering even to vote, that number 5, your county clerk will contact you and you will be asked to cure that ballot. So that means you can go in, and if you, I don't know, made your name different than what's on the on your registration or some little boo-boo, they will allow you to correct that. So,
but you do need to respond quickly if
right,
you're contacted.
Right, right.
Great, thank you for that. So again, our voting period, we have 6 days with excuse, October 26, 27, 28, 31, and the 1st and 2nd of November. Then we have early voting, no excuse needed, November 3, 4, 5. And we have Election Day voting on the 8th, and that's in addition to the mail-in option. I want to point out the address here, elect.ky.gov. To check where you vote, we talked about precincts. County boards of elections, county clerk's offices have different time frames for when they make this available on their website. I think the centralized location to go is elect.ky.gov. That is a function of the State Board of Elections, and you can just pick your county and it'll show you where those polling places are. All right, so let's talk about reclaiming voting rights in Kentucky. If you know someone who has a past felony conviction and has completed their sentence, they may be able to reclaim their voting rights if the offense was nonviolent, the conviction was not out of state, and the conviction was not in a federal court. You can use the QR code on screen to check eligibility. And again, that website from the state is civilrightsrestoration.ky.gov. And just a reminder for our voter questions, so we're all ready to vote. Is your voter registration up to date? Check it out. Which photo ID will you use? Make sure you have it and it's current. Which voting option will you use? Are you going to use a mail-in ballot? You have to request it by October 25th. Excused early voting, or election day. Where you're going to vote, know that in advance. And then think about how you can help your friends, neighbors, and family members participate in the election this year as well. Did you have anything to add, Luann?
Probably, but I have to think. But I just want to thank the audience that has shown up because, you know, it is our duty and obligation as Americans to vote. And not only to vote, I'm going to put a plug in for knowing what candidates and issues you're going to vote for. So you're not, you know, so you know what you're getting. And so just that. And I have some little flyers on the table over here that gives all that information about visit, go vote, and they got the little QR codes. And then how can I vote? So everything that was on these slides is on this little flyer so that you can check it out. And because there was a lot of information, you know, so we didn't pause very much. So the other thing too is if you've not registered and you register, it's like, well, what happens? You know, how do I know I got registered? You know, Becky said if you do it online, and I know the Secretary of State, Michael Adams, prefers online registration. It's just faster. But if you go to your county courthouse, Campbell County, Kenton County, Boone County, and fill out a registration card, the information is the same. It goes from your courthouse to the state checks everything out, and then you'll get a notice that, you know, from the court clerk that you've been registered, and he'll have where you vote, all that information, what districts you're in. And, but if you don't hear back from the court clerk, like let's say in 1 or 2 weeks, you need to contact them again to see what happened. So, but they will contact you if there's any problem. So the county clerk will contact you. But all that information is right here, and we've left some brochures over here.
And along the lines of educating ourselves about who our candidates are, the League has its own tool called Vote 411. It's an online tool. We are still in the process of entering all of the local candidates in Boone, Kenton, and Campbell County. The state offices are already there. So if you go to Vote 411 and you type in your address, it will pop up who's going to show up on your ballot and whether or not they've answered questions that the League has submitted to them. We encourage you to use that. We encourage all candidates to answer those questions so the public can be aware of their stances on issues that are important to the community, and we all become better informed about who's running. Mm-hmm. We have a question from the audience.
Just talk into that as a mic.
What type of questions do you ask the candidates on the Vote 411?
They're pretty basic questions. It's usually what makes you the best candidate for this office? What are some things that this office does that you think are good? What are some improvements that need to be done? And what kind of changes will you make? There are sometimes some specific issues, for example, in the Newport Commissioner race. I think there's a question that has to do with the legislature's passing a bill about charter schools in northern Kentucky. And I think the commissioners are asked to comment on that. What do they think about that? Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah, I notice when I go online and look at it, the questions sort of fit the position that the candidate's running for. So,
right.
Yeah, they're not all generic and they're not all the same. But if I'm a Republican and she's a Democrat, we get the same question. And We're running for the same office.
Right.
So
this is what's going to be on our ballot this year. We have legislators, we have Kentucky State Justice offices, we have local officials running, and we have 2 constitutional amendments. So I want to spend just a couple of moments talking about what those constitutional amendments are about. So Amendment 1 has to do with calling the legislature into special session. Currently, only the governor has that power. So if Amendment 1 would pass, it would mean that legislatures are able to meet more often and change Kentucky law more often. For the first time, the Speaker of the House and the President of the Senate will be able to call special legislative sessions. So this won't require any sort of vote by the Senate and the legislature, the House. It's just those 2 leaders of those bodies that can call the special session. Special sessions will be able to add up to 12 days per year to the legislative calendar, and legislators will define the agenda or the topics that can be addressed in bills passed during the session. There's another feature of this is that this bill or this constitutional amendment would allow carryover of information, bills that have been discussed in committee. In the current situation, none of that can be carried over. You have to start with committee hearings, bills filed, committee hearings. This will eliminate that, and things can just move more quickly under this amendment. So that's what a yes vote would mean. A no vote would defeat the amendment and mean that the current rule on legislative sessions will stay in place. The legislature will hold regular sessions for 60 days in even-numbered years, 30 days in odd-numbered years, and the governor will call any special sessions and define the agenda. Looks like we have a Q&A.
No, it's just, is there a way to leave some of those pamphlets? Yes.
Yeah, we will certainly leave some pamphlets and literature here. That would be our pleasure to do.
We'll leave them with Mark or our student
Our SGA.
president.
Yeah, Mr. Myers. All right, so Amendment 2 is about abortion. And this is, will change the Kentucky Constitution to state that nothing in the state constitution creates a right to abortion or requires government funding for abortion. So a yes vote will support the change. If Amendment 2 passes, state lawmakers will be free to pass laws restricting abortion, and those affected by those laws will not be able to ask state courts to overturn those laws as violations of their state constitutional rights. A no vote would oppose the change. If Amendment 2 is defeated, the state constitution will be unchanged, and those affected by state laws restricting abortion will be able to argue in state court that those laws violate their state constitutional rights. So, how can you help? Vote 411. Candidates' answers or information, is it absent? You can call the candidate. You can email the candidate and say, I'd like to know your answers to these questions on Vote 411. That usually gets some response. You can share Vote 411 with fellow voters. Ask people, are you registered to vote at your current address? And update your voter registration. If you go to Vote 411 to check your voter registration, it will link you right back to govoteky.com. And if you would like to volunteer to help us get 411 more vibrant, you can use this address, vote411 at lwvky.org. And finally, the League of Women Voters has something called Outreach Circle, which makes use of text messaging and emails to keep us all updated and informed. If you would like to join Outreach Circle, just scan that QR code and it'll take you right to it. We'd love for more people to be involved. And it looks like we've got a question from the audience.
Yeah, but I can't get it back up here. Oh, here we go. The question.
Oh, wait just a second. We got one audience question.
My question is, what is the voluntary opportunities look like?
A volunteer opportunity?
Yes.
Golly, if it's with Vote 411, we have it. It's a lot of working with inputting information and monitoring responses from candidates, following up with candidates who haven't responded. So it can be computer work, it can be phone calls, it can be emails. With Outreach Circle, that is a sort of a social media-based program. So there are actions, like creating actions that would go out on Outreach Circle that people can then share with their circle of friends with text message or email. And creating that is, it's higher than my pay grade, I'll have to tell you. So there are those opportunities as well. And I mean, it's tailor-made for people who love to use texting to share information and updates. So that's a great opportunity. Outreach Circle, thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
So here's a really great question from one of the virtual participants. If Amendment 1 passes, wouldn't it change the checks and balance systems by overriding the governor in special sessions?
I think that's, I don't know if I can answer that with a yes or no. What I could say is it does give the legislature more control over what happens in the sessions, because if the governor vetoes something and the session has ended, then unless the governor currently calls a special session, that's not going to come back up. If an item was to be vetoed and the legislature called itself back into special session, I suppose that could be one of the outcomes of it. I would add that the constitutional amendment does not restrict the governor from also calling special sessions. It just gives that opportunity to the Speaker of the House and the President of the Senate as well. That's a good question.
That was an excellent question because, I can't answer that either. It would probably take somebody with a law degree for me.
Yeah, yeah. And back to our earlier question, yeah, everyone, you're welcome, men and women. We are not exclusively an organization for women. League of Women Voters invites anyone to join us. And you can contact me at lwvnky@gmail.com. Yes, question from the audience.
So the changes in the Kentucky's voting laws, did that improve the voting situation in Kentucky in your belief, or was it a far enough step forward?
My personal opinion, and I think I can speak on behalf of the league as well, is that it is an improvement. We are further ahead now than we were pre-2020. I think it's a step back in another way in that we still have that, and we went backwards to having to have an excuse for a mail-in ballot. And I'll give you an example. Luann was just on a radio program yesterday, Cincinnati edition, with Secretary of State Michael Adams, and he said to us that in 2020 we had the highest voter participation rate in the state, the history of the state. It was like over 3 million people voted, and I think we can conjecture pretty safely that it had a lot to do with expanding the ability, the access to the ballot through no excuse mail-in balloting. So yes, I think what the legislature did took us further down the road. Is there further to go? Yes, there's further to go. Thank you. Any other questions? I want to make a quick pitch before we end for the next NKY Forum and League of Women Voters event in conjunction with the Chase College of Law. That'll be on October 18th. It's the 6th Judicial Circuit Candidate Forum. It will be here at the Digitorium. Again, a hybrid event. You can attend live in person. You can attend by the Zoom webinar. And we will meet the candidates for the 6th Judicial Circuit Supreme Court seat, who the candidates are Michelle Keller and Joe Fisher, and we'll meet the Court of Appeals candidates, who are Suzanne Citrullo and Robert Winters, Jr. There won't be any audience questions or participation, but there is a reception for those who attend live. And that's 6 o'clock to 7:30 on October 18th. You need to register, so go to nkyforum.org and look for the Meet the Judicial Candidates RSVP button there. And one more question from the audience?
Yeah, I just wanted to know, for people who have like felonies and they still qualify to vote, is their voter registration any different, or would they have to type in any extra type of information in order to still vote?
If they have a felony conviction in the past, but they've served their sentence, they need to go to Civil Rights Restoration. And we've got some information up here you can take with you. It's the state site, and it will walk you through. Some folks had their rights restored when Governor Beshear took office. He signed that, but you still need to check. Don't assume that it is or it isn't. So the time to do that would be now, before we get past October 11th.
Right.
And we'll walk walk you through that with these handouts we've got.
And I have another virtual question from Becca, and it says, can you say anything about the amendments on the ballot and their wording?
Well, because we're just keeping this to voting basics and voting rights for Kentucky, we don't want to get into the league's advocacy tonight. I don't think that's part of the agenda. I'm happy to discuss that with anybody who wants to give me an email, lwvnky@gmail. That's how you can reach me. I'm happy to talk about the league's position on these amendments.
Well, I think you can find them on the
And
State League of Women Voters.
We do have it up on the website, lwvky.org. Very good. Any other questions? Down there? Up there?
No, no more. I don't see any
All
more.
right. All right. Thank you all. Appreciate you being here. Thank you, Daniel, for inviting us, and thank you, Mark, for working with us through NKY Forum.
Oh, wait a minute. Oh, she just responded. Thank you. Fair enough. I appreciate it.
All right.
So.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Thank you.